Welcome to Sex at 10. I'm Rebecca Rosenblat, certified relationship and sexuality therapist and your host, here to answer your questions on all things intimate. Whether you're stuck in a relationship dilemma, have issues with your body, trust, trauma, addiction, orientation, or just need a little help with turning up the heat in your bedroom, give us a shout at 1-800-968-7836 and let's chat. Everything's fair game. If you've thought about it, we can talk about it. Let's begin with a discussion on why we're attracted to people who hurt us. And to help me with that, we're being joined by an expert in the area, Dr. Elan Golomb. Dr. Golomb is a clinical psychologist and the author of 2 books, Trapped in the Mirror, Adult Children of Narcissists in Their Search for Self, and her most recent, Unloved Again. Currently, she's working as a psychotherapist in New York City and has graciously offered to speak with us tonight on such an important topic. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Rebecca.
Thank you so much for joining us. Very excited about the interview. Dr. Golomb, even though conventional wisdom would dictate that we not be attracted to the type of people who hurt us, many of us are drawn to them because of repetition compulsion. So perhaps you could begin our discussion by explaining exactly what that is, what it looks like, and why it happens.
Okay. I've been reading about it and writing about it lately. It's very interesting how the repetition compulsion, which is thought to be our adult self, is choosing wrongly. The adult self is actually pretty much out of the picture. It's just watching from the sidelines as you do these things, and the adult is overly taken in by the emotions of the underlying self, which falls madly in love, and then takes over. And that part of the self is not an adult. We were talking about before that when you've had a very happy childhood, your childhood experience and your parent experience grows naturally into an adult that's living in the present. It's there, but it's not there in a controlling fashion. I mean, every once in a while the child will tell you to do something, like you're not a good skier. It'll tell you to go on the downhill slope when you're only doing the cross-hill snow plow, and you'll say to it, thank you, but no. Or the adult will say, I'm a little worried about, but nothing extreme. So that when you have a happy childhood, the parent and the child within the brain are still more or less in sync with the adult. And so the adult chooses someone who would be appropriate to love, who is there for the person, who has the ability to make a commitment, who can make a living, who wants to, if they both want children, they raise them together. Does all the naturally associated things with a happy couple, whatever the couple is. I mean, you could be oddball couple, but still you're in sync.
Right.
I mean, maybe that isn't what you want to do. Maybe you want to do spelunking for the rest of your life, which to me is a horrible idea, but there are some people who just love spelunking. Creeping through a dark cave in the mud is like, no. But it's okay because it's an adult decision.
And you're aligned.
Yeah, they're aligned. But when your early childhood experience was very desperate for the child, terrible, the parents were very selfish, self-involved, critical, attacking, maligning, or avoiding, abandoning, everything, raping, starving, name it, bad.
Dismissing.
So those 2 people of your early life, the destructive parent, our parents, and the submissive child become little parts of your mind, and they never grow up. In other words, it's not exactly grow up, but before the child and the adult move along into your adult self, where they become background noise. Once in a while they're there. But when your early childhood is so oppressive and so hurtful, they remain dominant. Because they are so disturbing, there's not much energy to develop an adult self, which you're not aware of. I mean, it'll show up in ways. Maybe you can or can't hold a job. Maybe you can. There are certain areas where you can devote yourself enough to become successful. But when it comes to the area of love, the entire thing falls apart.
Absolutely. And, a lot of them, they've missed various developmental stages that are critical to negotiating a healthy adult relationship. And I also see when people are triggered, emotionally triggered, they end up returning to their age of unresolved trauma and start to respond in that way. And as a child, the problems feel big and the tools are non-existent or really small. Viewers, if you're stuck in your own negative relationship patterns, tonight's a great night to speak with the expert who can provide you with some guidance. So don't be shy. Grab that phone right now and call us. Now, in your book, Unloved Again, you talk about two sides of repetition compulsion, the frozen child and the freezing parent, which tell the adult mind who and how to love. So can you please explain that concept next?
Yeah, well, I like the imagery of frozen because it means they are not able to develop past that stage. They will always be that. The child will always be stuck in submission, pain, adulation, begging, crying, weak, helpless. The parent will always be controlling, vindictive, critical, opportunistic, needing the child to be underfoot. They are stuck there. That's why I use the word frozen.
Right.
So the frozen parent talking to the adult tells the adult either you will never succeed at anything or whatever they do to maintain power. They will do that. And the child will scream, give in, or look at this wonderful person that came along with such a great authority, become that person's lover and, become enamored and become their slave, their servant, their victim. And because they are frozen and yet they have so much energy, the frozen parent and the freezing parent, the frozen child, they are always going to say and do the same thing. And then the adult was very thin layer of adulthood, very undeveloped, hears them as his true self or her true self and listens and does.
You had, in your book, I was reading very early on, you described it really well. You were talking about how a slave is not going to fight with their master, or somebody who's scared, they're not going to fight with whoever it is that's frightening them. And it was just such a beautiful metaphor that you had used that kind of covered that very point that you're talking about. Viewers, if any of this resonates, or if your partner has told you that you're acting exactly like one of your parents, grab that phone and call us to speak with the experts and clarify what's going on. When someone stays with an abusive partner, they lose their autonomy. Can you please talk about how that happens next?
Well, it's the child-parent frozen child, freezing parent. The more you stay together, the child gets more and more defeated. The parent, the adult figure gets smaller and smaller. Do you remember the Head of Nussbaum? Do you remember that story, that scandal, where she stayed with a lawyer and they had an adopted child, and she had been an editor, and he got her out of work, stayed home, brought her a lot of I guess, pot. I think they were smoking marijuana.
Right.
But he beat her, broke her nose, broke her ribs, and she narrowed her vision to the point of maybe today, maybe tonight he'll be nice to me, because the more you submit, the smaller your vision becomes. It becomes like a frightened, like a slave, like a person in a concentration camp. Maybe this day will be okay. And when her child was killed, I think he killed the child.
Right.
It lay in the bathtub. I mean, they didn't, and people did. They hated her. They called her a bad mother, and all. It took quite a while for them to recognize what it meant to be a woman who is abused.
A battered wife syndrome, yes.
Yeah. And so she lost all ability to decide. She lost the ability to get away. She lost the ability to defend herself, her children, narrowing a vision. It's very dangerous to remain in an assaultive relationship. It's very dangerous.
And after a while, you start to believe what the other person is saying to you, all the condescending remarks. And again, that frozen metaphor is there where the person doesn't think that they can do anything. They're just stuck. Viewers, if you feel like you're in an abusive relationship and you need some help, please don't hesitate to call us right now. Dr. Golomb, what causes the adult mind to believe messages sent from the frozen child and the freezing parent, which turn the past into the present?
Well, the thing is that the adult is, like I said, is not very developed.
Right.
They actually are not living in the present except in a few exclusive areas. Mostly, they are in that child state.
Right.
Mostly, they're in that parent state. Mostly, they are that frightened child hoping that they will win love from the abusive parent or identifying with the parent and being abusive to someone that they put in the child position. The adult is hardly developed. I mean, I think the whole thing with therapy with someone who is in that kind of relationship is to help them develop the adult.
Right.
Yes, because it's not that the adult is throwing away, I mean, they are throwing away their ability to make up their own mind, but they have very little power.
You know, when I do a lot of trauma work, and sometimes when we're talking about some of these painful issues, I literally see the person transforming into a child. Their posture will change. They just become smaller. The way they talk, their vocabulary, everything changes. And I'll often ask them, how old do you feel you're right now? And they'll say they're 2 or 4 or 6. And then I'll say, what happened at that age? And that's when all the truth starts to come out. And they're just sitting there waiting to rewrite a happy ending. Can you briefly comment on that, please?
Yeah, well, that is a myth. That is the kind of myth that is part of what keeps the adult from getting out, saying, you know, this is historical, this is an antique, this happened then, and it is not a now state. So the child at that time was always hoping to get out or be free or get out of the maze or win the parents' love or both. It can never happen. It's history. It's never going to change. The adult is like, I guess it's a question of mourning the past. It can never be healed in the way that you would want it to be, which would be that the happy ending, the parent-child reunion, is not going to happen. So that it's a big step forward to say, I accept it. I mourn the loss. It will never, you know, in that parent-child will never be healed. This adult can be healed. This adult can change its expectation and its demands, its needs, and not go for something, you know, where, you know, you meet someone, you're going to fix them, or they're going to fix themselves, or they're going to repair them, or you're misreading them, it really wasn't as bad as it seemed. The adult will stop doing that, right? The adult has to start making discriminating, you know, judgments. Right. So you'll never fix the past, and that, I call that mourning. I call it a state of mourning.
You have to mourn, you have to grieve, and then you can move forward. Sometimes I'll do 2-chair work, and we kind of confront it. And as we move forward, it's really exciting to see the client. It's almost like they've become a teenager, and then they catch up and they become an adult. And it's just such a delightful feeling to be able to walk alongside them when they get to that place. And they recognize that they can't fix that, but they can grieve it, and they can move forward and find the healthy place that should have been made available to them when they were little. Viewers, if you want to break out of any unhealthy relationship patterns, or if you have any relationship or intimacy questions in general, please call us so we can try to help you gain some clarity. Dr. Golomb, we've been discussing how our childhood hurts can make us stuck because we can't seem to process what's going on. So can you please discuss how that happens? In other words, how our defenses operate to conceal the recognition of that original parental hurt that creates the ignorance which captures us?
I think the defense is early as well. I don't think the adult did that. I think the child, wanting not to be as overwhelmed with terror as they are, will say, the parent really loves me, that's why they hit me. They'll say, I really am bad, I really am unworthy. They really would love me if only I changed this or that, if I only looked this way and didn't that way. And, you know, it's a child's denial of reality, which makes life bearable. But it never goes away. In other words, the adult is not living the adult life, which says not bearable, not acceptable, not decent. And I don't know, did we talk about this last time? I heard this interesting story about this doctor. He's Emmanuel Martinez. He works with centenarians. But
Dr.
he was talking.
Golomb, we're running off to break. Can you please stick around? Because I'd love to hear the story and have some more questions. So please stick around. We'll be right back. Keep your calls coming, and let's discuss sex, relationships, romance, or whatever else rocks your boat. And keep it locked on Rogers TV, because we have lots more great stuff still ahead, including your calls. So pick up that phone and call so we can connect.